The Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for Sport.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Birmingham. Oh, you ready for your question? We'll move to questions. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, President, and not to disappoint Senator Wong, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. I refer to the Foreign Minister's announcement last Tuesday reversing Australia's recognition of West Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which was announced with initial denials by the Minister's office on the Jewish holy day of Simchat Torah and just 2 weeks out from polling day in Israeli elections. The Prime Minister has described as, and I quote, deeply regrettable the government's handling of the announcement. He also said that it could have been done better and that it caused distress. Given these acknowledgements of failure, has the Prime Minister spoken with Israeli Prime Minister Lapid to apologise for the ham-fisted handling of this matter?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Senator Wong.
Thank you, President. I'm taking the question I think is representing the Prime Minister, but I could equally take it as obviously as Foreign Minister. I want to start by saying there are few issues that are more central for members of the Jewish community than the status of Jerusalem. It is more than a political issue. It's about history, it's about faith, and it's about identity. It's at the heart of Israel's origins and its future, and importantly, there can be no lasting peace that does not address its status. Its sensitivity and the status of Jerusalem is so sensitive that for the overwhelming majority of the international community it has remained a final status issue to be resolved as part of any peace negotiations between Israel and Palestinian peoples. Now, what the government has done is to reaffirm Australia's previous long-standing and bipartisan position of that fact, that Jerusalem is a final status issue that should be resolved as part of any peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian people. And I would remind the chamber that, notwithstanding some of the commentary, this has been Australia's position for decades. This was not changed by the Gorton government following the Six-Day War. It was not changed by Malcolm Fraser, Bob Hawke, John Howard or Malcolm Turnbull. Regrettably, there was one exception which occurred during the period of the Morrison government, a period in which the Shadow Minister was a member of the Cabinet. And we know why that was, because he thought he could gain political advantage by announcing recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and relocating our embassy.
Senator Birmingham.
President, a point of order. The Minister has provided 1 minute and 52 seconds of context for her answer. The sole question was whether the Prime Minister of Australia, Mr Albanese, has spoken with Israeli Prime Minister Lapid to apologise for the handling of the matter.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. There was also a preamble to that question that mentioned holy days and so on, and it mentioned the capital of West Jerusalem. So I'll listen carefully to the remainder of the Minister's questions, and I will draw her attention to the question if necessary. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. The Shadow Minister also talked about the phrase deeply regrettable. I think those are my words, and I've said that publicly.
Thank you, Senator Wong. The time has expired. Senator Birmingham, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Before the election, the then Shadow Attorney-General Mr Dreyfus assured the Australian Jewish community there was no difference between the government, the Labor Party, and the opposition, and now the Liberal and National Party's positions on Israel. As late as last Monday, the Foreign Minister's office denied any change of position to media, to Jewish community representatives and to Israel's embassy. Why did the government mislead the government Israel and the Australian Jewish community groups on this decision?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. Well, first, if I can just finish this point, I think the Shadow Minister does know, and the chamber does know, that Mr Morrison changed decades of bipartisan position in relation to this matter for the Wentworth by-election. That's the context of it. And I want to make this clear. You know, we made very clear, in fact, if you look at what I said in 2018, we not only opposed what Mr Morrison had done, I made clear that we would be reversing it. This is, you know, in the 2018 context of the 28 decision. Mr Shorten as leader, we agreed that we would reverse this position should Labor form government. I would hope that we made clear prior to the last election that Jerusalem is a final status issue. And the reality is there can be no lasting peace that does not address the status of Jerusalem, and we ought not be supporting an approach that undermines this prospect.
Your time has expired. Senator Birmingham, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Will the government join with Labor MP Josh Burns in apologising to Australia's Jewish community, and will efforts be made to apologise to the Government of Israel? Further, will the government guarantee, consistent with the pre-election statements of Mr Burns and Mr Dreyfus, that it will make no further unilateral changes to Australia's position on matters relating to Israel and the Palestinian people?
Minister.
Thank you. I have said publicly that the timing of the announcement, falling as it did on Simchat Torah, was deeply regrettable. I've said so publicly and I've said so in private. We remain. That is my view. In relation to Israel, I will be clear, and I have made sure that the ambassador is aware that I'd indicate this in the chamber. I have met with the ambassador, and we had a very constructive engagement. What I would say is that we both agree that Australia and Israel have a long and enduring friendship, which we will both seek to strengthen.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Grogan.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Can the Minister update the Senate on Labor's responsible approach to budgeting and how tonight's budget will start the job of budget repair?
Thank you, Senator Grogan. Minister Wong.
Well, I thank Senator Grogan for her question. Tonight we will see a Labor Treasurer hand down a Labor budget, putting down the foundations of what this government looks to achieve for the Australian people, over this term. It will be a responsible budget. It will be a budget that is right for the times, and it will be a budget which seeks to ready the country for the future. Now, those opposite it were the most wasteful government since Federation. Overseeing successive budgets riddled with rots and slush funds and weighed down with waste. They left us with $1 trillion in debt, but with nothing to show for it. It hurts them, doesn't it? It hurts them, doesn't it? You know, they like to pretend they're the party of sound economic management. They left Australians with $1 trillion in debt, and so little to show for it.
Senator Wong.
They spent.
Thank you. Order on both sides of the chamber. Calling out across the chamber is disorderly, and Senator Wong has the right to be heard in silence. Minister.
Oh, sorry. She called me again?
Yeah.
Sorry. They spent $5.5 billion on submarines we will never see, $19.7 billion in JobKeeper payments to companies with rising revenues, and they spent billions buying votes from slush funds, targeting coalition or marginal seats. I see the Minister for the colour-coded spreadsheets is interjecting. The Minister for Colour-Coded Spreadsheets is interjecting. Why don't you tell us about it?
Senator Wong. Resume your seat, Senator McKenzie. I asked you to resume your seat. When I call the chamber to order and then ask the Minister to continue with her answer, I do not expect everyone in the chamber to start shouting and yelling out across the chamber. It is disorderly. And the Minister needs respect, and I certainly need respect when I call you to order. Minister. Minister, do you wish Senator McKenzie? Resume your seat, Senator McKenzie, please. Senator McGrath, I have just finished asking for respect. I beg your pardon. Seriously, Senator McKenzie.
Madam President, I draw your attention to the standing orders. Ministers need to, instead of screaming at shadow ministers across the chamber in answering questions, need to go through the chair.
Senator McKenzie, you would be well aware that I have called the chamber, both sides, to order twice. Minister. Please continue.
Thank you, President. The Albanese government's first budget will begin the difficult task of budget repair after inheriting a budget in structural deficit and weighed down with record levels of debt, debt which is becoming even more expensive to service. The interest payments on the coalition's debt, one of the fastest-growing pressures on the budget. Now, we have spent our first months in office delivering on our promise to undertake an audit of spending going through the budget to identify where money could be returned or redirected to more quality spending, and you will see the results of that tonight.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Grogan, first supplementary.
Can the minister update the Senate on the state of the budget that this government inherited?
Minister.
As we know, those opposite doubled the debt before the pandemic. And have left the Australian people with debt, with $1 trillion in debt, with so little to show for it. But most importantly, and Australians came to understand this, they treated taxpayers' money like it was Liberal or National Party money, trying to buy votes instead of building value for the country. Now, since coming into government, what we know is that the global economic environment is significantly more volatile than it was just a few months ago. Whether it's global challenges are weighing on household budgets and the economy, as are cost of living pressures which have resulted as a consequence. We have also seen, as I said before, the cost of servicing government debt increase. In fact, revisions in the cost of interest payments on your debt, as well as the NDIS, are also placing pressure on the budget, unrelated to any policy decision of the government.
Your time has expired. Senator Grogan, second supplementary.
Can the minister outline to the Senate how Labor's approach of responsible budgeting contrasts with the Liberal and Nationals' budget mismanagement?
Minister.
Thank you, President. Thank you to Senator Grogan. Well, the fact is, in a time of extreme global volatility and uncertainty, in a time of rising inflation, one of the best defences the nation can deploy is a responsible budget, and that is what you will see tonight from Treasurer Chalmers and Finance Minister Gallagher. Our response to revenue upgrades will mean the budget bottom line will be that debt will be lower than previously forecast. There will be less debt than the Liberals, but more to show for it. And despite what those opposite might say, they did not leave the budget in a, quote, strong or improving position. They did not. So tonight's budget, the government has had to work to find room for billions of dollars of pressures left in the budget and legacy spending that you failed to provision for. We have engaged in responsible decision-making required to make room for the things that matter.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Duniam.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Wong, and follows revelations reported yesterday by Sky News that the Australian Energy Regulator has warned the Albanese government that power prices will rise by up to 50% next year. Even Labor's own budget tonight reportedly concedes that there will be a price rise of between 30% and 40%. Minister, will you now admit that Labor's election promise, made 97 times during the campaign, to Australians that their power bills will be cut by $275 annually, will never be delivered?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Senator Watt. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, I think there is no doubt, we all know, that Australians are grappling with the impact of rising energy costs. Australian households, Australian business, Australian industry. And those opposite might like to push this aside, but the world is dealing with the most significant shock to energy markets in 50 years due to Russia's prolonged attack on Ukraine. And Russia's willingness to weaponise energy has caused havoc in global markets, and it has sent coal and gas prices through the roof. Domestically, what else are we dealing with? Well, a decade of denial and chaos in energy policy, which saw 4 gigawatts of dispatchable energy exit the system. And guess how much came in under you? One. So not only have we got a global economic shock, a global shock to energy markets, we are dealing with a decade in which you ensured supply exited the market.
Minister Wong,
That's
please.
the reality.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Henderson.
President, thank you. I just ask you to remind Senator Wong to direct her comments through the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Henderson. I will remind the minister to direct her comments to the chair. Thank
Enjoy
you.
looking at Senator Duniam so much. You know, we have a nice exchange across the chamber. He's, you know.
Order.
No, he's one of the people on that side I have some regard for, and he's always happy to have a chat across the chamber. But if it offends people, I will turn this way. If they prefer me to talk to you, it's fine. As I said, we are dealing with energy prices which are rising much faster than were ever anticipated because of the significant shock to energy markets, the weaponisation of energy by Russia, which has caused havoc in the global markets, and also a decade of chaos, which has seen so much dispatchable capacity leave the system and only 1 gigawatt enter to replace losses.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Didn't mention $275 once. On October the 10th, Alinta Energy CEO Jeff Dimery said, "What cost me $1 billion to acquire is going to cost me $8 billion to replace." So let's talk about that and explain to me how energy prices still come down. Yet a Labor Party source claimed yesterday the Russia-Ukraine conflict was responsible for these massive power price increases. Who's correct, the Labor source blaming the conflict from well before the election, or Mr Dimery, one of our foremost energy experts?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
Well, I think I've actually answered that substantively in my first question, which pointed to the various factors which are driving energy costs. And you might like to pretend that the government and the country are not trying to grapple with, just as every country in the world is. If you talk to Germany about what is occurring for energy in relation to energy prices, you will see we are not the only government or the only people who are having to grapple with rising energy costs. But the one fact that those opposite just cannot accept, and it is this: renewables are cheaper. Renewables are cheaper. Renewables are cheaper, and the fact that you're allergic to that fact, the fact that you were allergic to that fact and you spent so many years fighting each other because you didn't want to accept the facts, is in part why Australia is in the position that it is in.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, in view of these huge increases in energy prices, alongside all the other cost-of-living increases Australians are experiencing, and in the face of a refusal to back in the promise to cut power bills by $275 annually, what does your modelling show about how many Australians will suffer energy poverty under your government's policies?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
Well, what I can say to you is this government will deal responsibly with the mess in energy markets that we inherited from you. And unlike you, our response is not going to be to try and hide price increases. Let's remember your great response, those opposite, the coalition's great response to rising energy costs on their watch was Mr Taylor making sure it was hidden from the electorate before the election. So I can tell you this: we will go about trying to deal with the cost increases that the result in great part from the shock to global energy markets and the mess in the energy markets responsibly and sensibly. And we are going to do it in a way. We are going to do it in a way that actually tries to reform energy markets. You have already seen that. You've already seen that with the Marinus link that was announced just last weekend.
Senator Cox.
I rise to ask a question to the Minister representing the Minister for Environment and Water, Minister Wong. CSIRO recently provided a fracking fact sheet in English, and it was then translated in language into audio files and provided to First Nations communities. Providing this fact sheet was one of the recommendations of the Northern Territory Fracking Inquiry. This misleading fact sheet was produced by a division that is partially funded by the gas industry, which includes Origin and Santos. and it stated that methane may play a role in climate change when we know that it definitely plays a role. In fact, methane is 80 times more potent than CO2, and at least 25% of the global warming is driven by methane from human actions. My question is, why are fossil fuel companies allowed to fund, in any proportion, divisions of a government agency, our scientific peak body that is expected to provide independent advice, especially regarding a controversial topic these companies have a direct interest in?
Thank you, Senator Cox. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and thank you to Senator Cox for the question. I'm sure she's unsurprised to know this is not necessarily something of which I have direct first-hand knowledge. So I haven't seen the fracking fact sheet to which she has referred. But if she is referring in relation to the partial funding that she described to CSIRO and industry partnerships, which I think has been in the media for some time, I would make the point that the CSIRO, which of course is an essential pillar of Australia's national science infrastructure, a great institution responsible for some enormous advances in research and very good liaison and engagement with the members of the Australian community. Now, it is part of CSIRO's mission to work with industry. It's part of CSIRO's mission to work with industry. So I don't know if what the senator is complaining about, or sorry, I wasn't trying to minimise it, referencing is one of the industry partnerships. If she wants to give me more information about that, I'd be very, very happy to provide that. But if this is a reaction to the CSIRO working with industry, we've taken the view in government, and I did as Climate Minister many years ago, that it is a good thing for those at the forefront of research both into climate science and into the response to climate change, how we deal with it, to work closely with industry. Industry has to be part of the solution. They're not just yelled at. And in fact, industry, where we have done well as a country on energy, when we've done well as a country on renewable energy, it has been where governments and industry have worked together, and the regulatory structure has incentivised industry to do the right thing.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cox, first supplementary.
First Nations communities have long stated their opposition to fracking on their land. Presenting them with this misleading information is outright offensive to their intelligence as traditional owners. Will CSIRO redo the fact sheet with accurate information about the risks of fracking for gas, including the impacts of methane on climate change, to ensure that First Nations communities are not misled and so they are able to adequately be informed of the activities that are proposed on their country?
Thank you, Senator Cox. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Can I also just perhaps add to some of the answer, which was, I understand that the member for Lingiari has raised issues in relation to, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this acronym, is it JERA? Thank you, program with Minister Husic, and I think and has indicated public that this matter has been rectified. I will go and I will ask my office to liaise with Minister Husic's office about this issue and see if I can provide a little more information about how that was resolved. But it's just been brought to my attention that Ms Scrimgeour did raise this with Minister Husic.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cox, second supplementary.
When will the Labor government listen to the climate science and commit to no new coal and gas projects and stop allowing these companies to buy a social licence and continue their ventures of state capture, all the while without the free, prior and informed consent of First Nations communities?
Before I call Minister Wong, I'm really struggling to see how that is a supplementary. But it's really up to Senator Wong whether she answers it or not. Senator Wong.
Look, I'm happy to answer as best I can.
Order.
Did
Please
you want to say
Minister
something?
Wong.
I'm happy to answer as best I can. In relation to, I think, the long-standing assertion from the Greens about energy coal and gas projects. I'd make the point again that I have on multiple occasions in this place that any such approvals would be subject to existing environmental and regulatory frameworks. I would also make the point. I know you want to get some political differentiation on this, but I would also make the point. This is not how the world deals with a global agreement to deal with climate change. The way the world deals with it is by ensuring over time the use of fossil fuels and the use of technologies which are highly carbon polluting is reduced. And we have signed up to an ambitious platform and we intend to deliver.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Senator Ciccone.
Thank you very much, President. And my question is to the Minister for Emergency Management, Senator Watt. Minister, I note with concern the devastating impact that floods are having on so many Victorians throughout my state. Could you please update the Senate on the current flood and severe weather situation affecting not just Victoria, but also New South Wales, Tasmania and Queensland?
Thank you, Senator Ciccone. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Madam President, and thanks, Senator Ciccone. I know you speak for many people on both sides of this chamber with your level of concern about these floods. As senators will be aware, Australia is now seeing the impact of a third consecutive La Niña, with flooding impacting many communities across the country. Over the last few weeks, we've seen flooding across Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, Tasmania and now South Australia. And the sad reality is that this dangerous weather is far from over. Of immediate concern is the heavy rainfall that has impacted northeast New South Wales in the past 24 hours, with the front now moving down the coast towards eastern Victoria. There are multiple emergency warnings current across both Victoria and New South Wales right now, and my message to people in those states is please listen to the authorities and heed their warnings and advice. We've already tragically seen 6 fatalities as a result of these recent floods, and we don't want to see more. Last week, the Prime Minister and I visited the communities of Bendigo, Deloraine, Latrobe, Launceston and Forbes, where we met with a range of first responders and impacted farmers and communities. I also visited Seymour in central Victoria with Victorian Minister Jacqueline Symes and the local federal MP Sam Burrell, and held an online community forum with leaders from across Shepparton to hear from these communities directly. I've also been in regular contact with many other affected MPs from across all sides of the political divide. While these floods have been devastating for many, there has been some positive news along the way. During our time in Tasmania, the Prime Minister and I visited Michael Perkins' dairy farm along with Senator Urquhart. During the 2016 floods, the Perkins family lost 48 heifers from their Latrobe dairy farm. I was heartened to hear that through improvements to warning systems, Michael was able to prepare earlier, ultimately keeping all of his animals safe, and that was something I heard throughout Tasmania. We're thinking of all the communities impacted by these events. We know this repeated, relentless flooding is tough and will be there to support people now and as they recover.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator Ciccone, first supplementary.
Thank you again, President. Minister, since the beginning of these natural hazard events, what assistance has the federal government provided to these communities impacted by the floods?
Minister.
Thanks, Senator Ciccone. As a government, we are standing with our state and territory counterparts, along with local governments and communities, supporting all of those governments to respond to the particular needs of local communities. As of 5 p.m. yesterday, our government has activated the 13-week disaster recovery allowance payment for this event across 17 council areas in Tasmania, 46 council areas in Victoria and 43 council areas in New South Wales. This provides some income relief for those eligible people who've lost income due to the floods. We've also activated the Australian Government Disaster Recovery Payment in 30 council areas across Tasmania and Victoria, providing one-off payments to eligible adults and children. On top of this, we're also working with the states to deliver joint support to help with clean-up, as well as specialised grants for impacted small businesses and primary producers. I'm certainly aware of the significant impact these floods have had on farmers and the infrastructure they rely on to get product to market. We'll continue to work with all levels of government across Australia to ensure people get the help they need.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator Ciccone, second supplementary.
Minister, what other support is being provided by the federal government to help communities with their response and recovery efforts?
Minister Watt.
Thanks, Madam President. When I spoke to people in Seymour 9 days ago, the biggest message they had was the need to get recovery support in quickly. They told me very clearly that any delay in starting their clean-up would lead to longer-term issues. The SES in every state do an excellent job, but this is a big event over a long period of time. So after consultation with the Defence Minister, I've approved requests for up to 600 ADF personnel across Victoria and New South Wales at the request of those state governments. Our fantastic Defence Forces have been doing an outstanding job, helping with sandbagging, evacuations and now supporting clean-up operations, damage assessments and the provision and resupply of essential food and supplies to isolated communities. We've also approved the use of ADF helicopters in both New South Wales and Victoria for everything from mass evacuations, if needed, to lifting heavy equipment. I want to thank the ADF for making these personnel and resources available and, of course, thank those boots on the ground for their efforts in helping these communities recover. I know very well the morale boost it provides to communities.
Your time has expired. Senator David Pocock.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher, represented by Minister Wong. The government has said that today's budget is all about delivering on your election commitments. One of those commitments was a commitment to, and I quote, protecting the rights for small business, including ensuring security of payment in the building and construction industry. This is something of concern here in the ACT and across the country. Subcontractors miss out time and again on payments for work done. So my question to the government is, when will you act to implement the recommendations of the Murray Review from 2017?
Thank you, Senator David Pocock. Minister.
Thank you. Thank you to Senator Pocock for the question. And again, oh, that's good, isn't it? Isn't that nice?
Cooperation.
It's called cooperation.
How about that?
Order.
How about that?
Order. Senator Watt.
I am. Thank you.
Order. Please continue, Minister.
I thank Senator Pocock for the question. We all know that the enormous economic contributions small businesses make to the Australian economy, and as importantly, they're the heart of local communities across the country. They employ millions of Australians, and they contribute more than $400 billion to the nation, or $430 billion to the nation's economy every year. In addition, we know firsthand the extent to which the COVID-19 pandemic and associated lockdowns and what occurred through many cities and towns, how hard that hit many small businesses. I will see if we can get more information in relation to the 2017 report to which you refer, but I will say that there are a number of measures that the government has already put in place, $18.6 million to help support small businesses adapt and build resilience through digital technology. Small businesses will also have access to new tax incentives to train and upskill employees and improve their digital and tech capacity under reforms to be legislated by the government. The technology investment boost and skills and training boost would be backdated to 29th March so that small business owners can receive
Thank you, Minister. Your time has
full
expired.
benefits.
Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. The Electrical Trade Union has said, and again I quote, "Too many workers and subbies are being left in limbo through no fault of their own. Delivering security of payments will simply create a better, fairer industry where subbies can rely on the commitments made to them and the employees can have certainty that their job will be there tomorrow. Does the Minister agree with this?"
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister.
Well, I think we would all agree that if people are owed money, those contracts, unless it is impossible for obviously issues of solvency, those contracts should be honoured. I think that would be a fairly logical approach to how you might address looking at contractual requirements. would say that we, and I have a brief that tells me about unfair contract terms. I am unsure, and I'm afraid I haven't been able to ascertain the extent to which that applies to the particular factual circumstance the senator outlines. But I would say we've introduced legislation to make unfair contract terms illegal, so that small businesses can negotiate fairer agreements with larger partners. This is an issue which has been raised over many years, the disparity in negotiating power between big business and small business.
Your time has expired. Senator Canavan. Oh, beg your pardon. Sorry, Senator Pocock. Second supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister. On Thursday, the government will move to introduce legislation abolishing the already defunded ABCC. Don't you think ensuring subbies are paid is a more urgent legislative reform?
It's building trade. Minister.
I'll answer what I'm able to. I'm not sure the extent to which it's supplementary. I know that Senator Pocock has taken a different view, a view closer to the coalition on this, but I think the abolition of the ABCC was very clear to Australians when they voted for the Albanese Labor government, and we have been clear why. We don't think there should be two sets of laws for workers in this country, and it is wrong to say that the ABCC was able to deal with a whole range of criminal matters. We know those matters are dealt with by the criminal law. So our position in relation to that has been clear, and it has been articulated publicly ahead of the election.
Thank you, Minister. That's it for you, Senator Pocock. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, on the 22nd of January 2019, Anthony Albanese put out a press release titled "Rockhampton Ring Road, a certainty under Labor." The Rockhampton Ring Road is the biggest infrastructure project in regional Queensland, and it is already out to tender. Yesterday, the ABC reported that the $800 million earmarked by the Coalition for the Ring Road project has been put off for a few years. Local businesses have contacted me and the member for Capricornia, Michelle Landry, furious with this broken promise from the Prime Minister. Mr Albanese's comment that it was a certainty had encouraged many local businesses to spend thousands of dollars on their tender applications. Minister, is the only certainty that Australians can bank on from this government is that it will break its promises?
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Minister Wong.
Thank you, and I've seen some of the social media by Senator Canavan on this, and I would make, well, yes, you know, avidly. I particularly liked you in your high-vis vest in your backyard, mate. I thought that was great. Yeah, it was like very dangerous backyard you've got. Clearly, I should have put that on when we were doing the kids' trampoline.
Order.
But anyway,
order. Senator McAllister.
Very risky backyard there. Anyway, I understand. I'll make this point. First, the government is committing...
Senator Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Bant... Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Sorry, my bad. Obviously, my bad. Yes. Sorry. Obviously, my glasses need renewing. My apologies. I thought you were someone from the other place, and I'm sorry to have interrupted you, Minister. Please continue.
I will make the point, and obviously the minister is actually being Minister for Infrastructure is being represented by Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just
Order.
I'm answering the
Senator
question.
Canavan,
I'm just trying to be helpful, Senator Canavan. That obviously Senator Watt is more across this than I would be. I understand in that relation to that particular project, it is incorrect to assert that it is being cut. It is the case that those opposite, as was the habit of the Morrison government, did a lot of announcements without making sure that those announcements could actually be delivered. And, you know, it is an extraordinary thing, isn't it, to have a government that actually wants to make sure when you announce projects you are funding them in a way that can make sure—
Minister Wong, thank you. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a point of order on relevance. The question is about a statement that the Prime Minister made. It is about the article about the government's agenda, but all I have heard from Senator Wong is to blame the previous governments here. She is insulting the businesses of Central Queensland.
Please resume. Senator Canavan, please resume your seat. I remind senators, if you are rising on a point of order, the point of order is short and sharp and does not have commentary. Minister Wong is being relevant. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. I was trying to explain what was occurring in relation to the project in question. We have reviewed projects in the infrastructure program to better align investment with market capacity, consulting with states and the territories through this process. This is what responsible governments do. I would be very clear. I understand that the $823 million for Rockhampton Ring Road remains in the budget. But unlike the former government, we're actually being upfront about project delivery timelines. That's the responsible thing to do. Senator McKenzie, you can yell all you like, but an announcement is not delivery.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. I remind you, Senator McKenzie, calling out across the chamber is Senator McKenzie, it does not require commentary. I am drawing you to order. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Madam President. This next question is on behalf of those businesses, so it might be useful if the senator did not yell at them from here in Canberra. As I mentioned, those people, those mum and dad businesses, have spent thousands of dollars on the words of the now Prime Minister that this was a certainty. What do you propose they do now, Minister Wong, given they haven't been able to rely on the words of the Prime Minister?
Minister.
I'm asked about local businesses, and I understand that the local business organisation Capricorn Enterprise, in fact, warned the former government there weren't enough construction tradies to fill the infrastructure pipeline. But you ignored it. I mean, this is the problem with the government.
Senator Wong. Senator Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Canavan, I haven't called you. I am calling the chamber to order. When the minister is trying to answer the question, there needs to be silence. Senator Canavan.
Madam President, on relevance again, as I mentioned, this question was about the businesses in the local area and what they've spent. Again, the Prime Minister is talking about the former government. That is clearly not relevant.
Senator Canavan, you've called the point of order. The last time you stood and called a point of order, order on my right. The first point of order you called, I asked you for no commentary and you've completely ignored me and there was commentary again. I do believe that Minister Wong is being relevant. I will listen carefully. Minister.
I think Senator Canavan seems to be asserting that Capricorn Enterprise, the business chamber, is irrelevant to a question about business. Well, maybe you should explain that to them, Senator Canavan. The reality is the money remains in the budget for that project. There are over 700 regional budget commitments tonight, no matter the scare campaign from those opposite. The reality is, as with so much in the modern Liberal Party and modern National Party, they think when they announce something they've delivered it. You think when you've announced something, you delivered it. The reality is you couldn't deliver and you weren't actually interested in doing what you had to do to deliver it.
Order. I have a senator on his feet waiting for silence to be called. Senator Canavan, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Minister, the Prime Minister has broken his promise to reduce power bills by $275 a year. He's broken his promise on methane emissions from cattle, and now he is breaking his promise to fund infrastructure. Why is the Prime Minister so gutless that he could not be up front with the Australian people about his plans before they voted for him?
I ask you to withdraw that comment.
What?
Senator Canavan.
Parliamentary.
You made a slur against the Prime Minister. I ask Senator Canavan. It's not a debating point.
Can I ask you to reflect on that ruling, Madam President, because I have heard much worse in this chamber. I did not reflect on the Prime Minister's
Senator
on
Canavan,
his,
I've asked you to withdraw. I expect you to withdraw.
I will withdraw and reword the question. Can I have that opportunity? And could I ask that you do reflect on that
I'm happy
decision?
to reflect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
'Cause
withdrawing.
it seems a little inconsistent. So, have I got a full clock?
Senator Canavan, just resume your seat for a moment, please. Order. I would ask all senators in this place to be respectful. Senator Canavan, I will give you the opportunity to rephrase that question. I'm happy to reset the clock, but I would ask you, when I give my directions, to stop responding. You're not in a debate with me, so please continue.
Minister, the Prime Minister has broken his promise to reduce power bills by $275 a year. He's broken his promise on methane emissions from cattle, and now he is breaking his promise to fund infrastructure. Why has the Prime Minister not had the courage to be upfront with the Australian people about his plans before they voted for him?
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Minister Wong.
Well,
Order on my right.
actually, the Prime Minister is a man of courage and a man of authenticity, and those opposite might not like that fact. You might not like that fact, but that's what he is. That's what he is. And no amount of coming in here and asking, such. I mean, really, Senator Canavan, if you want to give a speech, why don't you just give a speech? I mean, that's not even a question here in question time, is it? It's just a little bit of diatribe, trying to get a little bit of, invective up in the chamber. It's not actually seeking any information, which is what question time should be. I've made clear 700 regional budget commitments tonight that relate to the regions. Which includes $9.6 billion of election commitments for infrastructure. The project to which Senator Canavan refers remains in the budget.
Thank you. Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is for the Minister for Emergency Management, Minister Watt. Minister, you said this week that you're talking to the Defence Minister about the need for a standby emergency response workforce to clean up after the fires and floods across the country. I am with you on that, but I can assure you we are flying by the seat of our pants when it comes to a national emergency response in this country when dealing with national disasters. So I'm just wondering exactly what you've been speaking to the Defence Minister about.
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Madam President, and thanks, Senator Lambie, for your interest in this issue. Obviously, North-West Tasmania, an area you're very familiar with, has experienced floods over the last couple of weeks, so these issues are very topical in that part of the world. It has been reported, actually now a number of times, that our government is giving consideration to how we as a country should properly resource disaster management, both in terms of the immediate response and the longer-term recovery. I think the reality that we're all seeing unfold before our eyes is that climate change is here. We are seeing more regular, more frequent, more intense natural disasters, and we haven't been well enough prepared as a country, and frankly the federal government hasn't been well enough prepared in the past either, and this is one example of that. So I have begun some discussions with the Defence Minister, along with other colleagues and a range of non-profit groups, about how we can make sure that as a country we do have effectively the workforce, whether it be paid or volunteer, to cope with the size of the task that we are now facing. Even what we're facing at the moment, and this is just in October, I've already updated the chamber about the number of ADF personnel we've activated across Victoria and New South Wales, and they, of course, supplement the many hundreds and even thousands of SES personnel, paid emergency services workers, volunteers and other groups as well, which again shows the size of the task. This work that we're undertaking is at a very early stage. We are open to a range of options about how we meet the future workforce needs. The point about the ADF, and I mentioned this in my earlier answer, is that quite apart from the incredible practical difference they make on the ground, helping people clean up and recover from disasters, they do provide an enormous morale boost to communities when the trucks roll in. But the reality is we do need to make sure that we don't stretch them too far when they do have a core job being protecting the nation as well.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator Lambie, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Minister, the ADF has said that disaster clean-up is becoming a distraction from their main job, which is to protect the country. We're not going to set up this new workforce overnight, and we know that our third La Nina period is going to happen over summer. So, what provisions, if any, are in today's budget that will set up an emergency response for workforce, or are we not there yet?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Madam President and Senator Lambie. Of course, Senator Lambie, this being my first budget participating as a minister, I'm not about to give away details of the Treasurer's budget. But what I can say is there are going to be some very strong commitments in the disaster management space tonight. You may be aware that we made an election commitment to provide a grant to Disaster Relief Australia, a veteran-led volunteer organisation that you're no doubt familiar with. And we're fighting hard to make sure that we deliver that commitment. Of course, any work that the federal government does in this space is to supplement the leadership role that states and territories play. We don't want to come in over the top of states and territories. We want to supplement them with ADF resources, volunteer organisations and a range of NGOs as well. Unfortunately, the former government had 10 years to get these things right. They didn't. We're now here, and now we're trying to fix their mess in this space, as we are in so many others. Actually, we are taking responsibility. It's a foreign concept,
Your
I
time
understand.
has expired. Order. Order on my left. Order. Senator Lambie, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Right now that we do know that we don't have near enough boots on the ground. That's not going to change. Unemployment is crazy low right now. Have you asked your department to look at how we recruit people to do these things? And if so, what models are they considering?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Madam President. I can understand yet again why the opposition is so sensitive about this, because they had 10 years to do something about these issues and did nothing. But here we are, fixing their mess, making sure that we are properly prepared as a country for natural disasters, making sure that we have a workforce to deal with these events, rather than running around and pretending that climate change isn't real. We're actually taking a responsible approach to this. I might answer your question in two ways, Senator Lambie. The first answer is that I have seen myself publicity about the fact that our government intends to launch a recruitment campaign for ADF personnel more generally, but separate to that in the disaster space. As I say, we have made an election commitment to fund one particular organisation to add to the ADF work, which adds itself to the SES and other state-based organisations. We're in discussions with a range of other not-for-profit groups about what can be done, and I'll be more than happy to take any views that you have, Senator Lambie, about how we can do this better as a country, because I know that you, unlike a number of other people, are serious about these issues.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator Bilyk.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Wong. Last weekend, Australia and Japan signed a joint security declaration. Can the Minister advise the Senate on how the agreement will strengthen our relationship with Japan?
Thank you, Senator Bilyk. Minister.
Thank you, President. And can I thank Senator Bilyk for her question and acknowledge her ongoing interest in foreign policy. And I know she and others share a desire, the desire which is mine and many others in this chamber, which is to strengthen Australia's relationship in our region. Japan, of course, is a special friend of Australia's. They are our special strategic partner, and we are natural partners. And there are many aspects to our partnership. It's obviously trade, investment, defence and security ties bind us. But we also have a deep affinity between our peoples and, importantly, shared values which go to democracy, the defence of human rights, free trade and a rules-based international order. There is already a very strong relationship with Japan, and I would, in a moment of bipartisanship, recognise that both sides of politics, parties, governments of both political persuasion over years have invested in the Australia-Japan relationship, and I acknowledge the work of Senator Payne in the period that she was Foreign Minister in that regard. The government is working to make that relationship stronger. It was my privilege in my first overseas trip as Foreign Minister to attend the Quad Leaders Summit. In the first 5 months of the government, the Prime Minister has met Prime Minister Kishida 4 times, and I have met Foreign Minister Hayashi 4 times, as well as many other ministerial engagements. And importantly, over the weekend, at the annual Australia-Japan Leaders Meeting in Perth, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and the Prime Minister of Japan, Prime Minister Kishida, signed a renewed joint declaration on security cooperation, a declaration to chart a path for defence and security cooperation between Australia and Japan for the next decade. Our strategic environment is changing and our partnership has to evolve.
Senator Bilyk, first supplementary.
Thank you for that answer, Minister. Can you also inform the Senate of how the declaration has been updated since 2007?
Minister.
Thank you, President. As I said, we all know our strategic environment is changing rapidly. The circumstances the nation faces are more challenging than at any time since World War II. And in light of that, we have to work together, and our partnership with Japan must evolve to meet the growing risks, and we have to work together to pursue our shared values and strategic interests. So the renewed declaration sets out how Australia and Japan will work together to deepen our strategic partnership as we pursue and help realise a common vision for a free, open and resilient Indo-Pacific, a region that is inclusive, a region that is resilient. The declaration includes collaboration in areas such as climate change, health security, humanitarian assistance, energy transition and disaster response and maritime security. And importantly, leaders also announced that Japan's self-defence forces will train and exercise in Northern Australia.
Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Bilyk, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Can the Minister advise why it matters to the region and to the world for Australia to deepen cooperation with Japan?
Minister.
Thank you, President. Japan and Australia share a common goal of a region that is stable, that is prosperous and that is respectful of sovereignty, and a world in which differences and disputes are resolved by international law and norms, not simply by power and size. We also have an interest in nuclear non-proliferation. Prime Minister Kishida hails from Hiroshima, and he has made clear his aim for pursuing denuclearisation. We share his ambition. And I particularly in this chamber want to underline a very important part of the statement between the very important part of the statement between Prime Minister Kishida and Prime Minister Albanese, which was the condemnation of Russia's threat to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine. It is serious, it is unacceptable, an unacceptable menace to the peace and security of the international community, and it is important today that I repeat that condemnation here in the Senate chamber. Any use of nuclear weapons will be met with a resolute and unequivocal
Your
response.
time has expired. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Watt. On 13 October, Medibank released a statement confirming it had been subject to a cyber attack and that it was taking offline some data and policy systems to mitigate the impact on customers. On 19 October, a week after Medibank informed its customers, the Minister for Cybersecurity issued a press release. Why did it take the Minister a week to publicly respond to yet another significant cyber incident?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator Patterson, for your question. Look, I don't monitor the Minister for Home Affairs' diary as closely as Senator Patterson seems to, but what I can tell you is that from the moment this breach was reported, the Minister for Home Affairs and the government as a whole has taken action, just like we did in relation to the Optus breach as well. This matter is under investigation by the relevant authorities, including the Australian Signals Directorate and the Australian Federal Police. It's exactly the same approach that we took in relation to the Optus breach, because we do take these issues seriously. Unlike the former government, who spent 10 years doing very little about this, did nothing to address the issue of penalties against corporations who failed to meet consumer expectations around data protection. So now I know that the Minister for Home Affairs and the government as a whole is working closely with Medibank Private to provide all the support possible to help resolve this situation and protect those customers who've been affected. Medibank Private is receiving ongoing technical advice and assistance from the relevant Australian government agencies, including, as I say, the Australian Signals Directorate and the AFP. And the AFP has launched Operation Pallidus to investigate the Medibank Private data breach. Medibank Private advises that it has begun to make direct contact with affected customers, and can I encourage anyone who thinks they may be affected by this recent Medibank Private cyber incident should contact 134246, and for Medibank Private customers the number is 132331.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. When was the minister first informed of the attack?
Senator Watt.
Well, I don't think Senator Patterson would expect me to know that level of detail about another minister's operations, but I'm happy to take the question on notice. But again, what I do know is that the minister has been highly attentive to these issues, as she was in relation to the Optus data breach as well. And unlike the former government, we are taking serious action about privacy matters and data breaches by large corporations. We're introducing legislation just this week, in only probably, what are we up to, the 6th sitting of Parliament?
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Patterson.
Madam President, I only asked on relevance. I asked the minister when the minister was informed of this attack. He said he didn't know, that he would take it on notice. Everything he's added since then is not relevant to the question.
He's entitled to continue, but thank you, Senator Patterson. He has taken it on notice. Minister Watt.
It's interesting that Senator Patterson jumps the minute his own former government's record is called into question, and that's because that record was so bad. Unlike the government that was led by those opposite, our government is working closely with businesses, the community and our international partners to progress initiatives that enhance Australia's response to cyber incidents and support a whole-of-nation uplift in cyber resilience. We take these issues seriously. We're introducing legislation this week to strengthen penalties.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Your time has expired. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank the minister for taking the previous question on notice, and I look forward to the answer to that question. My second supplementary question is, when did the minister first speak to the CEO of Medibank to discuss this attack?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister.
Happy to take that question on notice as well.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Minister Wong.
I ask that further questions be placed on notice. Thank you.